Hello and welcome. My name is Sandy Cavanaugh. I'm responsible for leading Russell's U.S. Private Client Services Group. I am happy to be here today with Jeff Belkora, who is a friend, a skilled researcher, and an intellectual partner with Russell. We have done some great work together, and I'm really excited about being able to have this conversation with you, Jeff, about some of the work you've done on a common topic that we share, I think, some passion about, and that's trust, and how do you build a trust relationship with clients as well as with, in your field, a doctor and a patient. So before I do anything more, I'd love to have you give us a little bit of background on what you've done, how you've done it, and why we think it's so important in both of our worlds to continue to work on that trust relationship.
Yeah, thanks for having me,
Sure.
Sandy. We are translating the kind of work that I've done in healthcare into financial services, and we're finding all these parallels. So I got involved with this work through my study of engineering, and specifically decision science. And this was a study of how we can help people weigh the risks and benefits of different options. And I fell in with a group of medical doctors who said, that's what we do with patients. So I followed them into their practice, which happened to be breast cancer. And I accompanied 200 patients as part of my PhD training. I accompanied them on their journey and put some of our decision support tools to work for them as they were meeting with their doctors. And I learned a lot. And what I came out with was an understanding that there's a discovery process for discovering the patient agenda. And then there's also an engagement process for really engaging with patients and helping them weigh those risks and benefits of different treatment options. And finally, there's an issue around leverage, where you really want to be leveraging an entire team. And so when I started talking with you and your colleagues, I think we found that the parallels are just...
They really are incredible, and both on the positive side and the negative side, right? It isn't all good. Because I think we recognize, and certainly I am a breast cancer survivor, so I understand how difficult it is as a patient to put yourself in a position where you're relying on information and guidance from someone else in an area that you don't know anything about. And we certainly find that in the financial services world, that even people that are very experienced and at the top of their field are struggling or do struggle with how do they build a relationship with an advisor, how do they create trust with that advisor. And we in the financial services world, and I think you've found this as well, tend to be knowledge-based. It's a very complex system that we provide. So we tend to be fairly paternalistic about knowledge and trust, and it tends to be a one-way exchange. You need to trust your advisor, you need to trust your doctor, and yet we don't take that time to build that relationship, and it becomes a one-way exchange. So I think you've done a lot of work about how do you create a more balanced, trusting relationship? How do you turn that dynamic into one where each of them has a responsibility that they bring to that relationship and therefore then get better results?
Yeah, let me pose this as a challenge. How do you demonstrate that you're worthy of a patient's trust or a client's trust?
Right.
And so in my work, what I found is one of the ways you do that is that you actually show as a professional that you trust the patient or the client.
And so how do you do that?
Well, it goes back to the issue of discovery, of discovering their agenda. Because, in a theoretical sense, what you were talking about earlier is the agency problem, where the agency problem is that we want to take on agents and delegate decisions to them, but we don't know if they're really acting in our interest.
Right.
We know they're going to act in our behalf, they're going to operate, or they're going to, give us medicine or whatever, but we don't have the technical knowledge to really know if they're doing that really in our interest. And so the discovery process is really important, to where you demonstrate as a professional that you're not professional-centered, you're client-centered, you're patient-centered. A lot of professionals may do this backwards, especially if they're less experienced, and they may try to demonstrate their competence by using technical jargon and by making prescriptions to the patient.
Right. Well, I know, and it's funny because my son just received his residency affirmation where he is actually
Congratulations.
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. It's been long haul.
Yeah.
But he is new at this and so eager and enthusiastic. But I even see him sometimes falling into that, you ask him a question and he talks medically in a jargon that I don't understand. And yet, I think that the field that he'll be in is very different than the one that he would have entered 20 years ago in terms of really trying to understand that patient-doctor relationship. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you some real concrete examples. So when we've studied doctor-patient communication, the sort of previous generation we found interrupts patients 18 to 23 seconds into their presentation of their questions and concerns.
Yeah, I
right?
hate to say that probably happens with financial advisors quite a bit as well.
Yeah, and so and if you can let people finish their presentation, what we find is that they'll present 4 to 6 issues that are of real importance to them. And if you can even take that deeper, we think of that, the first 4 to 6 issues, as the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of easy to
Right.
draw out of people. But if instead of then launching into your agenda as a professional, if you can hold back a little bit and get people to elaborate, to go deeper into the iceberg, show the depth of the iceberg, you tend to get out another 6 to 12 issues that are kind of elaborations that provide more concrete. You said you were concerned about side effects. Tell me more about that. Oh, now I see how your concern about side effects relates to your hobbies and your quality of life.
Right.
You start to, as the professional, you start being able to make those connections.
Really weaving the tapestry
Yeah.
of the patient's life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then connecting your professional knowledge to their concerns.
Right.
And so that's how you demonstrate that you trust the patient. And that builds the trust equation in the other direction as well.
Right. So really, it is important that the patient comes into that conversation with an understanding that there is something on them as well as on the doctor, and certainly with the financial advisor and the client, same thing, that they will get out of it what they put into it to a certain extent. So, if they really do want to build that relationship where they feel like they're getting a great outcome, they need to change the dynamic and create a balance that we haven't seen before, really.
So trust is not just about trusting your doctor and your doctor trusting you. It's also about trusting the system that your doctor is operating in.
Right.
That they have access to good, medication and surgical equipment
Partners
and partners.
and support.
Exactly. And so I think your firm plays a really important role in that ecosystem in the financial world.
Right. I think that's right. And I think that advisors more and more are understanding that their primary role is so critical, and that is understanding the client and building that relationship with the client so they can act as, the quarterback or the guide to all of the things that are coming into play with the dynamic changes that happen to all of us on a regular basis. And I see where those parallels are amazing with what you're doing, and that's really why we're working with you to help advisors kind of bridge that gap and understand what more they can do on the beginning of the relationship, or even if they've had a relationship, how can they improve it with these tools?
And in some ways, the technical proficiency of that professional is actually less important than that professional's role as a gateway to even deeper technical
Absolutely.
expertise.
And we see that all the time with our business as well. And there's so much more that we could talk about. Hopefully we'll be able to have you back and we can discuss this in more detail. I want to thank you, Jeff, for joining
You're
us
welcome.
this afternoon.
Thanks.
And we both recognize that trust building is a process and it's a real challenge. And we appreciate the work that you're doing, and we also appreciate the parallels that we have in our own business. So everyone, we hope that you enjoyed the session. Thanks for attending.